Hey everyone, Dankus Dad here, and I'm back to talk about my local championship winning deck with King Ghidorah. And I got to play with one of my favorite cards, Combined Firepower. Despite the errata limiting this card to King Ghidorah, Combined Firepower is still alive and kicking. And it is going to still be a really strong aggro card in the meta, even though it's limited to a character who at least recently, has only been playing control and highly interactive mid range playstyles. So, let's talk about why we're playing Ghidorah, why Combine Firepower, and how this deck does its thing. So, the pro to Ghidorah is that you can access Combined Firepower in the Bing Bongs. Not many other characters can claim this. In fact, none can, because you only get one or the other. Combined Firepower, you can play it, but you can't use the response, so not very good. And the Bing Bongs are plentiful, but Ghidorah is the only one who can use Combined Firepower to just churn through your deck, get them into your discard pile early, and front load a lot of stats. So, one thing that also is really strong about this deck is that Ghidorah's static ability that gives him his head counters and lets him survive those extra attacks is very strong into a lot of the best aggressive decks in the format. So Nick Reagan and Pony Sunatori rely on just coming hot out the gate and killing you early with big attacks you can't answer. And Ghidorah just gets an extra shot. He gets two of them, in fact. So if Nick comes with that big, true 100% and wants to really take you down, then Ghidorah can just shrug it off and kill Nick on the crackback. And even with, just some small defensive investment, a deck like Nick can high roll and still not easily kill Ghidorah consistently in just 2 turns. Ghidorah also has discard pile tutoring. Control side of things, very good. But on the aggressive side of things, it's just as strong. You can fetch out win conditions, get key foundations, or any other tech piece that you might need. And yeah, he's just fantastic. So this, just that enhanceability is going to let good players keep winning games. And if you sort of learn the ins and outs of this deck, you're going to be getting a lot of mileage out of it. So there are some drawbacks though. And the big one is no stats on the face. Ghidorah does not give any stats per se. He just has that tutoring ability and his static that gives him the heads. But we can fix that problem a bit. Combined Firepower is going to really basically say Ghidorah has an arbitrary amount of damage. So great, you're not giving damage on face, but your character's access to Combined Firepower just solves the problem. And as for speed, even though this is a more aggressive deck, the package of unmatched quickness still is going to work there. Relentless Challenger, going to give the damage. And Incubating works on defense and lets those Combined Firepowers come out. So just the classic Ghidorah's tools still get to do their thing and kind of be the pseudo character face ability, because getting stuff when you're at 10 or less health is free for him. So here is the deck itself. I'm going to have a link down below for you to follow along. But you can see here, our foundation curve is very low. We want to be able to maximize our chances of building. So we're running lots and lots of ones. It's typical 8 zeros for a 6-hander. And capping out our curve with only 11 2 difficulty foundations and no 3 difficulty ones. There are some good choices you can have in that spot. If you want to do a little mansplaining with Mineta, I can't really fault you for that. But trying to stay low to the ground and get those early kills is more important here. So we're giving up those more controlling 3s. On the attack lineup side, I built this deck to have a sort of small weapon package, but there's not really any synergy for that. Instead, we have just the consistent Sword of the Darkness Flame that is excellent in this character, and then a toolbox of attacks to do a variety of different things. Do we need to pump damage, get some breakers, start off a long string, get some extra damage, make our opponent make some checks? true 100% of course for the late game closeout and to block. There are lots and lots of different tools in the box, and I'll go more into depth, but the little hand rip package here I think is something that you might see more of if you are at Albuquerque or trying to play this format before Attack on Titan Apocalypse comes into play. Also for our actions, pretty standard defensive package, and we add those runaways in the sideboard to really come out and shut down those aggressive matchups, games 2 and 3. Ichigaki is there for control as an asset, and just having a blanket way to say no to your opponent is very nice and can throw a wrench in some decks that really rely on that one crucial ability resolving. So, cards of note, the Bing Bongs. I'm with you, Loss of Consciousness. You know them, you love them, and you've seen them a bunch. I'm with you, being the one that's featured most prominently. Kevin Broberg's Worlds winning Hanji list really showed what this card can do, and plenty of people are playing it. My own local, Josh Atkins, playing lots of Mirko too with these cards. I think I've seen them against me probably more than anybody outside Ohio. So I finally decided to join the dark side, put these into on Ghidorah, and just the stage control and stats that you get for no investment is the best. You can seal things, boost up your damage, and trigger your combined firepowers to keep the party going. So, love these cards. The interaction with them and combined firepower really is strong, and yeah, that's what we're doing this with this deck. For the evil symbol, we get to do some special things. So, usually with this kind of deck, Death would make a lot of sense. Void has access to tools like Sweeping Daggers, obviously very, very strong card. Nonagon also has been very good. So why would we go with the evil symbol? Well, to start off, we get another Bing Bong. And it might be, one of the best ones. Lust for Battle is really, really good. The fact that this goes off just during the combat phase and not just the enhanced step is really messed up. And being able to pseudo breaker your opponent or kind of give your attack speed is really nice. Makes those combined firepower chains even more consistent. And yeah, we have ways to get it into the yard from our board. So Lust for Battle is a big all-star in this deck. Incompatible Quirks might be the best foundation still legal in the game behind Science Bros. And you can put both of those in one deck. Air is pretty cool, but on Evil, this card will sure do the work for you. And Ghidorah can fetch this one out with his face. So you get to bring Incompatible Quirks back from your discard onto the board if your opponent finds its answer. And if they want to play a slower matchup, then you can say, I can resolve every attack that I have access to, and it's not going to end well for you. So I love Incompatible Quirks, and in any deck on those symbols, it's not a card you should be leaving home without. Fierce Wings. Now, in the control version of the deck, Fierce Wings is great, but in this deck, it has a little bit of extra utility that I'm going to talk about. So on this enhance, it says remove. Add one card with a difficulty of 3 or less from your discard pile to your hand. And, immediately in this graphic, you can see Incompatible Quirks over there to the left. Even if you're not blocking with it or doing anything, pretty sick to say, yeah, I'm picking up this Quirks, and if you don't kill me, I'm going to be setting up real soon. That's very nice. But you also may have seen in the deck, and I'll pop back over quickly, that there are 2 3 difficulty attacks, Surprise Daggers and Scavenge Rifle Shot. And Fierce Wings lets you pitch it to tutor up one of those. So on top of the tutor from Ghidorah's face, you also have Fierce Wings, which is able to get you another attack. So this card can be an attack in those late game crunch situations. And if you have Ghidorah to grab some hand rip, Fierce Wings can give you that 3 difficulty attack that with combined firepower is always going to be big enough to get the job done. And, it's getting Showdown, it's getting Barrier Shield, getting your foundations and pieces like that. It is just such an all-star. And the two copies of it feel just perfect for just having that control over your discard pile. So, I also had mentioned this hand rip package, and here it is. Violent Animus Shot, I think, is one of my favorite pokes from this new set. Incidentally, also very good if your opponent is trying to do anything with backups. Being able to draw a card and get flash is nice. And flash is really not much of a downside because on this attack, you don't want to really be juicing it up. What this card says is if you block this attack, I've made you block with a card. You had to spend that. And since Combined Firepower is not a card that other decks are going to have as much as they used to, spending that card to block is a real investment. And if they choose not to do that, they have to remove a random card from their hand, which is arguably even worse for them. So chaining one of those or two with the next card, Tri-Gravity Beam, means that you can start really pulling cards out of their hand. And sometimes if you have a Tri-Gravity Beam, you Ghidorah to find a third or second Tri-Beam, maybe three, you can really, really pick apart your opponent's hand. And at the end of the day, you have Scavenge Rifle Shot and Surprise Daggers, as I mentioned, that let you close out your string and finish the job. So you might ask why one of each and why not two of the one that's better. And the answer to that, in my mind, is that you want each one in different spots. Surprise Daggers is a nice one when you are trying to fix your draw if you don't have the number of combined firepowers. Because even though those enhances do not do anything for you in the sense that you won't be putting stats on your attack, they sure do mill 4 cards and give you more chances to hit your bing bongs and get your combined firepowers online. Rifle Shot is a mid, but it comes in with 4 base speed and 5 base damage, which is enough to close the door in some situations where with a Lust for Battle, you can ensure that your opponent is not going to be able to block it. So different strokes for different folks, and each of these cards will be better in different matchups depending on what you need to go up against. Next up, we have win conditions. So on the evil symbol, we have access to Life of Danger, which lets us play 2 difficulty cards a little more freely. And opposite Risho's Meteor, we have 100% power. So this isn't a card that you're going to see a lot in Universes, but in this deck specifically, it really is a workhorse. And it does a lot of different things for you that on the surface aren't really obvious. So if your rival has 6 or more foundations, gets 5 damage, 5 low for 10, cool. Seems good so far. And then if your rival has 10 or more foundations, commit their character. Can be nice, especially if they're trying to skirt deadlock and are more controlling. This can let you commit a problematic character like, say, Tarion Darrington, and really take away their ability to play the defense they want to. Now, the most notable thing on this card, though, is EX3. And while there are some momentum outs in this deck, being able to get one very, very fast attack is just what the doctor ordered. And you put all of those together, and this card more than earns the spot as a 2-diff. I'm running it in this list alongside Risho's Meteor, but if you prefer something like Dragon of the Darkness Flame, can also be a reasonable choice. But I think these two work best since the next card we'll talk about, I think, makes Dragon of the Darkness Flame a bit redundant, which is Irwin's Final Charge. So this is our one big mid, and it lets you sacrifice any number of foundations. Attack gets +1 damage for each foundation you sacrifice this way, and if you sacrifice 5 or more, gets +5 speed. So this really says, 10 speed mid for a lot of damage. And one thing that's very nice is if you have those bing bongs that are stuck in your stage, suddenly they're not. And when you do Irwin's Final Charge, you may end up sealing 2 foundations, giving -1 or 2 to their check, putting on 4 damage, and setting up combined firepowers. And if your opponent's plan isn't to play from hand with actions, then they're out of luck. Like if they aren't a runaway deck, and this sneaks through the Genkai's timing, you might just be able to close the door right then and there by sacking your stage and, closing it out. The other part to talk about, though, is that because you are Ghidorah, sometimes you can poke a bit aggressively this card with this card in a way other characters can. Like in I think two of my games at my local championship, I went down from 8 to 3 foundations and 6 to 1 even, just to poke my opponent for a lot of their health, because I knew with Ghidorah I would still be able to rebuild following up the attack and just have that buffer because of the heads. So really cool card. You can just fetch this on demand with Ghidorah, and yeah, puts in the work and lets combined firepower do its thing by making Venom, Strike Dagger, Sweeping Daggers, or any of those or not Sweeping Daggers, Surprise Daggers, or any of those other cards get the job done. Then gameplay advice. So with this deck, as I implied, you're going to want to be pressuring early and often. So use your health to overextend a bit more than you might do with another deck, because your opponents aren't usually going to have ways to get through all the heads. And sometimes if you are on the draw going into a deck like Nick Reagan, if you can build 5 or 6 even and just hold 1 or 2 cards that you can't really block with, just do it. And if they don't kill you, your next turn is going to be looking really strong into them if you saw a combined firepower or two. Next, building in incompatible quirks is going to be a way that you win a lot of the games where your opponent might try to turtle up. So don't be afraid to take one of those mid-game turns off, build in that incompatible on 2 or 3, and then really make your opponent feel that pressure for the rest of the game. And then the last thing is that your sideboard is full of polarizing silver bullets. Runaway is just so incredible into cards like Earthbreaker and Godzilla, or any of his attacks for that matter. Ichigaki can shut off something like a City Rampage. If someone were to do something like commit an asset for -speed with Tarion, and then try to do some sort of swap or reset or some other trick, you can get them there and force them to only commit to 1/2 of their combo. The Ichigaki just solves all your problems. Sweeping Daggers doesn't get that effect it would. Shut off. If Lethal Slash is trying to clear on the response, don't think so. Yeah, it's a great card and is going to help you punch through as well as defend. So that's really it. Pretty straightforward deck, not quite as thinky as something like the usual kind of Ghidorah control piles where you're trying to stall out the game and set up an unbreakable stage. Instead, you are just trying to front load those stats, get that damage, and win some games of Universus the old-fashioned way. So that's all for now, folks, and it's been real. Peace.